because for one thing, he was of the mindset to consider suicide as a viable option. So really, this should be used as an argument for the transition to a resource-based economy, because it shows that materialism is literally killing us.
Yeah, it's a mental illness. It's an issue of public health, and if we viewed it in that light, it might get more attention, and attention that it deserves in order to actually properly understand it. We understand if someone's an addict, they suffer from a mental illness. Well, materialism is really just another social illness that has provable, direct mental health problems. And it obviously, I'm sure there are some studies out there, nothing really jumps to mind with me, but that correlate between, your how disposed you are towards material possessions and your true happiness or your true life fulfillment. And I'm sure it's a very highly negative correlation there.
So, I mean, from your knowledge, how would you say that this certain individual got to this point in time? What do you think would have had to have happened in his life for this to be the end result?
I mean, it's so hard to diagnose these extreme cases without more insight into their past. I think we really need to look more so at the social epidemiology for depression and for other mental health problems. I mean, we could speculate all day long as to what his background was like. I mean, if I were to venture a guess, it would be that their relationship had been deteriorating for years, maybe even a decade, and perhaps there's a high dissatisfaction on the guy's part with the materialism and the consumption tendencies of his partner, and this Christmas shopping episode was really just a triggering point that pushed him over the edge, such that it pushed him into irrationality. I mean, obviously his action wasn't logically thought through in the sense of, sounds like a good option. It was more like he was triggered, and he was, he couldn't help himself, and he just did it. That would be how I would make sense of it in my head if I didn't have any other information. But obviously I would reserve any judgment until more evidence came through.
Yeah, I mean, from the eyewitness reports, they apparently they were having a big argument, and I think the dynamics of shame play a big role in this as well, because she called him a skinflint, which it's a word that English people use as well. It basically means you're a cheapskate, and that he was ruining Christmas. Now, if these reports are actually true, then really it's very similar to a story that I heard from Dr. James Gilligan of the guy who he lost his job. I think he was a foreman. He lost his job, and he kept going out every single morning, pretending that he was going to go to work, and came back. And all this time he was looking for another job. And after about a month or so, the wife realized that the money wasn't coming through. So she questioned him about it, and eventually he came clean. And partly because of the feeling of deception that she felt, she started insulting him, asking him, "What kind of man are you?" sort of thing. And then that just caused him to snap. Apparently he walked into the bedroom, grabbed a gun, shot her to death, and the kids started screaming, so he shot them too. And he said that that still didn't work because he could still hear their screaming. And and I'd say this situation, while its violence played out in a different way, I think it's partly a different dynamic, because there's the element of shame in there. Maybe this guy had maybe shame had been a part of this guy's normal mindset, and to be shamed yet again in front of his girlfriend after 5 hours of shopping, having to carry her bags apparently, and it seems unrealistic to those of us who wouldn't even dream of jumping off a 7th floor balcony, because we have that balance of mind. But when we think about things like this and perceive them to be unreal, it's because we're of that different frame of reference. We can't think to us, we use that sort of frame of reference in our moral judgments when we say, oh yeah, this guy killed this guy in an alleyway, and it's an immoral act, and we say that because we personally judge it from that frame of reference, and those judgments, while in those cases are more justified because there's an actual infliction of violence that is performed. When it comes to different decisions that people make, which really mainly affect themselves, like for example the decision of suicide, a person who isn't suicidal is less likely to fully understand the mindset of someone who is suicidal. Maybe this guy was suicidal for a little while beforehand, and it just took this last thing to push him off the edge. As you said, I think the dynamic of shame plays a hell of a lot in there, and if you look into the work of Dr. James Gilligan, then he speaks a lot on the idea of shame, and even and that's also utilized quite a lot in retail and commercials, because there was an advert in the UK a few years ago. It was from some service that basically offers you a certain amount for your old mobile phone, and basically gives you money for it. And one of the first things that are said in the advert is, "Are you ashamed of your old mobile phone?" So it builds that sort of shame into it, not just in that respect, but also with the stratification that materialism has as well, that you're made to feel shame if you don't buy this.
Definitely, I think it's a great point you're making, and we know that the reason why advertising and marketing are so successful is that they often instill feelings of insignificance in the potential customer, such that they're not satisfied with what they own, and they need to constantly buy more in order to finally become happy. And the most successful advertisers are the ones that can repeatedly convince you that you need the latest phone, the latest pair of shoes, and ad infinitum.
Yeah. So just to give a little more angle on this, I just thought I'd try something that I haven't done on this podcast before. Basically, just for the listeners, me and Matt are just going to watch a quick video, and for those of you listening, you'll be able to. I'll paste in the audio from this particular video. It's this story that we've just been discussing being discussed by Cenk and Anna from the Young Turks. So Matt, if you can just bring up the link to the video that I posted you.
Yep, I've got it.
Cool, and we'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, in a couple of minutes. So you'll be able to listen along with this as well. So here's the video of the Young Turks discussing this story we've been talking about.
A man in China went shopping with his girlfriend, Christmas shopping to be specific. They were shopping for about 5 hours, and then his girlfriend decided that she wanted to go into another shoe store. And he was so distraught over this that he literally jumped to his death. He jumped 7 stories off the 7th floor of the mall, and he died upon impact. Now, this is obviously a very, very tragic and depressing story. And according to one eyewitness, he told her she already had enough shoes, more shoes than she could ever wear in a lifetime, and it was pointless buying any more. She started shouting at him, accusing him of being a skinflint. I've never heard of that before. And of spoiling Christmas. It was a really heated argument.
Okay, so first of all, skinflint, awesome word. Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever seen him before, but if I have, it was once. But I get it. Like, he's cheap for only buying her 5 pairs of shoes, and he's spoiling Christmas. Okay, you have some doubts about this story?
I question the authenticity of this story.
I mean, they got pictures in there. I mean, I don't know that proves anything, but guy taken away, covered up.
I just find it unbelievable that someone would hate shopping that much that they would jump to their death.
That's because you're not a guy. And you haven't been there for 5 hours with a woman who will not stop shopping. Okay? Look, this guy's name is Tao Sao. And Tao...
I don't believe the story.
No. It's a perfectly normal name. Okay. Tao, my brother, I mean, you obviously shouldn't have done that. By the way, the name of the mall is Golden Eagle. Okay. Anyway, but...
You know what you can do? I know it's a really crazy idea, but you can just leave the mall. If you're that upset with your girlfriend and you're like, I want to end this, you just end the relationship. Don't end your life. Walk out.
Of course. But apparently he got frustrated according to witnesses, right? And he starts throwing her stuff around. And then she's still like, no, I'd still like to pursue more shopping. And so he just jumps off the 7th floor. I don't know if he thought he was going to stop. It was a moment of insanity, temporary insanity, etc. I don't know. But God, he's like, brother, we've been there, man. We've been there, okay? I could run 10 miles and not be half as tired as after 1 hour of shopping. Like, it's the most exhausting thing in the world. Please, no, not another store. I'm begging you, right? And this guy, he's in there for, we got 5
hours.
5 hours! Let him go! Well, then okay. It's a serious, I feel bad for the guy, but, okay, he let himself go, obviously, at that point, but, what do you call it? You're absolutely right. And look, guys, here's the thing, right? Look, obviously don't do anything extreme like that. You know that already, obviously. But, look, if you got to your threshold, it's okay. People get to their threshold. You know what you do? You go, hey, hon,
I'm going to take a cab home or whatever it is.
No, you know what? You literally say,
end of this.
That's it. And you walk out. You say, hey, good luck with the shoes. I'm willing to break up with you. Or if not, you want to get angry at me, I'm willing to feel the brunt of your anger for me spoiling Christmas for you for not going to get your 6 pair of shoes. But here are your shoes, and I'm leaving, and good luck to you.
There is nothing less fun as a woman to go shopping with a man, in my opinion. I know some women are all about it. I hate shopping with men. Cannot stand it. Because there might be a chance that he'd want to go into a men's clothing store, which would be horrible, right? I don't want to deal with that. And also, I don't want to bore him either. I want to go do my shopping. I don't want any nagging. I don't want, when are we going to go? I'm hungry. Wah. Just stay home or go watch football. Do whatever it is that you want to do.
Agreed.
I'm going to go with my girlfriend, or even better, I like to shop alone. That's actually the best case scenario because I can take as long as I want without having to worry about inconveniencing someone else.
Right now, half of America wants to go out with you. Okay, and I don't know why the women want us to come. I don't know why. No, I'm really lucky. My wife's like, oh, who wants the headache of you moaning, oh, football game. She's like, get out of here, right? Yeah. And that should be the case. But look, if you got to your breaking point, the bottom line is, calm down, walk out. Deal with the consequences later. It's going to be okay. Just walk out, okay?
So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. That's the news report from the Young Turks covering this story. Matt, how would you say that Young Turks covered this?
Well, I guess slightly better than mainstream media, but I think they're along the same lines as the criticism that we've been issuing for most people. They seem not to really ask the deeper questions as to the root cause of these problems. There's an obvious gender bias from each of the hosts. The man could obviously empathize with the guy being fed up with the woman for shopping, and the woman was taking the female slant of, obviously I want to shop, but you should have just left the mall and said you didn't want to participate anymore. And each of them seemed to give an account of what would the logical response be, rather than let's try to understand where his extreme decision came from, which is really the question that needs to be asked. I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out a more logical response to this action than committing suicide.
Because I mean, the impression I got from them is that, I do agree that they were presenting, they were representing their genders, as it were, but as you rightfully said, they weren't asking the questions about root causality. Really, their responses to resolve the situation, but also to keep people shopping. Even though I don't know exactly how glaringly obvious something has to be where essentially it was the situation of the shopping and the argument and, the insults that this guy supposedly received, because I have to keep saying supposedly or allegedly because this hasn't been proven to actually have happened. So, I've got to use that sort of disclaimer language. But it's clearly obvious that it was the forces of persuasion that marketing uses, and come on, it's a 7. I don't know exactly how many levels are in this shopping centre, but there's at least 7. So this is like a huge place of consumerism. So obviously, during a Christmas shopping period as well, there would be decorations everywhere. There would be so much material propaganda, as it were. So the scenery is already set for it, and it just invites people in to just spend money, and we never stop to think, wait a minute, is it spending money that is actually making us miserable? Mm-hmm. Is it that's creating some distortion? There's certain acknowledgement of that in different media that I've seen, even on the mainstream, where they say, you shouldn't go wild with your credit cards. Because there's a recognition that buying material things isn't the route to human happiness, but it's seen as something we should do anyway because it's what the economy needs, and it's just this surface level thinking, because people think, it's what the market needs, though. Some people are gonna go into cinemas and shoot people up. Some people are going to go into schools shooting people. Some people are going to go into churches and shoot people. But those are just anomalies, as you referred to earlier. And as long as we're sensible with this sort of thing, that's what I find. One of the things that I find even most ridiculous about everything, the idea that materialism can be good in moderation. And that somehow the mainstream promotes this mode of moderation, even though that's completely inverse to the requirements of GDP. Mm-hmm. It's truly unbelievable. How would you say that it's that a good way to address this to people who really haven't really got to the root yet of this particular thing. To use this story as a case study, as it were. If this assuming it to be true, how would you say that using this story as a case study could be successful in turning people away from materialism?
Well, I'm not 100% sure that materialism was necessarily the root cause of this problem. It could have just been the triggering point for an extremely unsatisfying relationship at the heart of it. There's no doubt materialism, though, is a big topic that needs to be addressed from this issue. But how to turn people away from it? I suppose you just have to present experiences and examples to people, because evidence usually doesn't work for too many people who are addicted to something like this. To provide experience and examples that don't fit with other beliefs that they hold. I'm trying to think of a more tangible example to elucidate this point more. I mean, if you can describe to them the obvious harm that placing so much importance on material possessions has, you can hopefully get them to start to see the damage that their reckless consumption has on their own personal health, the health of the health of their relationships, as well as obviously the planet. But that's probably not of concern to people who are such recklessly inclined. So it's a difficult question, very difficult, and it's probably different for everyone. But I guess another part of this is to try to get people to think more in terms of root causality, which I try to explain to people by analogy. I say, imagine if you were in a courtroom setting and we found evidence that the defendant was guilty of first-degree murder. And people who are inclined to the establishment will say, yeah, we've got to send him to prison then. There's the evidence, he's got to send him to prison. And you bring up another part of the scenario. You say, what if we were also to discover evidence that this person had a malfunctioning brain, that he suffered brain damage as a child and or as an infant, whatever, and that there was a correlation between this particular form of brain damage and a predisposition to commit violent acts. Would you then still place, sole responsibility on this person for committing that action, or would you say that there's something deeper there that would have caused the action? And then that example usually gets them to see that there is a deeper causality at play here. And if you can then further expand on that by explaining to them that, well, pretty much every behavior, every value is like this. People don't operate, out of a vacuum. Their behavior and values come from somewhere, and just because we haven't found it yet doesn't mean that gives us a license to condemn that individual.
Exactly. I mean, this is also, the kind of thing that we as activists can use to gauge exactly how a person feels about something. As we ask them questions, their level of responses can tell us exactly what kind of things they advocate. Like, for example, in the example that you gave, if people were to respond to the second question still with the same answer, then you will know that they're the kind of person who thinks that personal responsibility, ranks very, very high on their list of priorities. That it doesn't matter what's happened in your life, you're still accountable for your actions, no matter what you've done. If they give that kind of response, then you can tell exactly what kind of person you're dealing with in that regard, and as such, it's unlikely that you would get any kind of success in their responses, as I've definitely found, because I've spoken to a lot of people about issues of rehabilitation, and I think their responses for the kind of people who think that you should always be held accountable and you should always pay for what you've done, quote unquote pay. They're the kind of people who would reject root cause analysis, because they
definitely, and this inclination to blame people individually as being responsible for their actions without any further deeper examination of the root cause. That's a viewpoint that's not come about through hard study of the evidence, where they've been absolutely convinced by a myriad of scientific research that shows that that free will is real, that people are the sole initiator of their actions, I mean, it's just ridiculous, and I don't think there's any scientific evidence out there that really corroborates this viewpoint. So it's really an emotional viewpoint that these people have through years of indoctrination into this type of mindset, whether it be through religious training or basically the economic status quo, which also reaffirms this viewpoint of rewarding behavior, rewarding individuals for their supposed monetary contributions, and punishing them for when they fail. So you can easily see an economic basis for ignoring root causality and harping on individual responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for that clash between root causality and maintenance of the status quo, then the status quo wouldn't exist. The establishment wouldn't be dominant if it allowed itself to be open for it to be questioned. And I think that's one of the things we always need to be very conscious of. The idea that people in general aren't really familiar with the process of root cause analysis, unless it's something that they particularly need to utilize in order to maybe assert something of their own. If it's something where proving it serves their interests, then by all means they'll appreciate root cause analysis. But if it's something that clashes with the emotional tendencies that they've been conditioned to hold in their heads, then they will reject it. And as you said it correctly, it's an emotional position, like for example free will. I mean, the one question that I always ask people that stumped every single person that I've asked it to, when I ask them, okay, well, if you think that free will exists, then tell me of just, you don't need to list any, make a big list, just list one thing one decision that you have made in your life that wasn't influenced, that wasn't informed and thus influenced by your life experience.
That's a very good question.
And they cannot answer that, and normally people just like move on to the next topic. I normally find if people just like move swiftly on, then I know it's something has been shaken up in their brain, at least to a certain extent, for them to want to get out of that particular topic.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's basically along the lines of how I said about presenting people with a real world experience that doesn't trump, or doesn't match, or doesn't fall in line with their beliefs. So I think that question accomplishes exactly that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like the scene in The Matrix where Morpheus asks Neo, "Do you believe in fate?" and he says no. Then he asks, "Why not?" and he says, "Because I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life." It's a negative emotional thing where you feel powerless to control things. But the thing is, what kind of control do we have of anything in our lives besides what we, well, I don't know. I can't actually think of anything that we have ultimate control over, us, in our own heads, because everything is always influenced whenever you try. Because this is the train of thought that I've tried to lead people down, trying to get them to think of something. Because at least if I get them to think of something that they haven't needed their life experience to influence, then at least then it's completely debunked the logic of my question, and I can go along with that new knowledge. So in a sense, I'm asking them to sort of debunk the whole thing so we can all move on. But now people...
Sorry, just to add one thing, it also reminds me of Christopher Hitchens' quote. When asked if he believes in free will, he said, "I have no choice." So
Yeah.
I really like that one. And it shows, I mean, everything, I mean, whether we live in a purely deterministic world or whether there's an element of randomness, either one doesn't leave any room for the concept of free will. And not that we necessarily have to go into this topic because it's obviously a humongous one that we could spend another show on, but
Oh yeah.